Hi, Las Sendas. This is Mark. I'm a trainer, strength coach in the fitness center. And to help me today, because I can't do two things at once, is Marlis. She's a member of the fitness center and also a pillar of our community. So she's kind enough to help me out with this. The purpose of this video is to piggyback on the article that was in the Las Sendas Living magazine talking about mobility and stability functions of joints. There's a concept called joint by joint approach to training created by Mike Boyle and Gray Cook, who are two really smart guys. And we want to use this, or at least have this idea when we're doing training. So the idea, or the concept, the theory is that alternating working up the body, joints have alternating functions. So I'm going to have Marlis with her right ankle. We're going to talk about just some ankle mobility and all that it can do. So it can go dorsiflexion, plantar flexion, go eversion, inversion, and it has all kinds of degrees of movement in it. If we go to the next joint, all that we have at the knee joint is flexion extension. So if she were to bring her heel up to her butt, that would be knee flexion and knee extension. It really doesn't have anything else that it can do, and we don't want it to do anything else, and that's why we have the ACL, the PCL, the medial collateral, lateral collateral ligaments, is to keep that knee stable. If we get an unstable knee, we got issues. Working up to the next major joint is we have the hip, and here's where we get into some improper movements and compensations when we do things. So we can go, and I'm going to have her raise the knee. That's hip flexion. We go hip extension. This could be unloaded on our back, stand all different positions. We have, and I'm going to have her turn her toe towards me, her right toe towards me. That's external rotation. Turn it in. That's internal rotation. We also have, if she moves her foot away from her line, that's abduction, abduction. Bringing it in as adduction, hip adduction. Okay. When we get into some hip flexion extension movements is when we start getting the compensations. Okay. The next kind of major area coming up from the hip is the lumbar. And for the most part, we want that to be stable, and that's where I'm not a big fan of spinal flexion movements because of the trauma, many trauma caused on the lumbar area. Coming up, then we go to the shoulder joint. Super mobile joint. This is the entire shoulder girdle. So Marlis can do almost any type of range of motion, direction. She can go lateral, she can go horizontal, all kinds of stuff with these movements here. A compensation that will occur, I'm going to have her go into a standing position, but I'm going to give you a side view here. If she were, or if you were to do a overhead press and a person doesn't have quite that shoulder mobility, what happens sometimes is we start to hyperextend the lumbar area. So, and also conversely, if we're, another compensation is a person doesn't have great shoulder mobility, sometimes they can get into some tilting and leaning, changing the spinal alignment, compensation with overhead press, and we're going to get into a couple of different compensations here in a second. So I'm going to have Marlis lie on her back. We're going to talk about pelvis, lumbar stability when we go into hip flexion extension stuff. So here's something that I would suggest you be aware of, is keeping that pelvis in place. Whether you have the lower back pressed into the floor, or you're just maintaining your lumbar arch, we do not want that to change when we change our hip angle. Another thing, when we got to know the difference between hip and back. So if I were to have Marlis bring her right knee back towards her torso, you can keep that left one straight. I'm sorry, keep the left one bent. Okay. There's a possibility that that might go into posterior tilt. As she extends it straight ahead, chance it might go into anterior tilt. So as we go into hip movements, it's important to keep that lumbar locked in place. Okay, just bend both knees for now. Again, a simple shoulder mobility test or assessment could be, I'm going to have her take her arms at her side, keep thumbs up, elbows locked, okay, because we don't want to cheat by trying to bend the elbow. And I'm going to have her sweep her arms all the way up over her head. Keep long, see if she can get the thumbs to the floor without changing the upper spine alignment. If there's excessive arching that occurs, rib cage tilts, lower back tilts, then we have some type of shoulder immobility here. I'm going to have her do one more. So as she comes back, and she's been doing this a while, she's got pretty decent shoulder mobility. She goes into a overhead type movement with both, trying to get the thumbs to the floor. Not too much arching of the upper spine, so it's pretty good. Okay? You can come back up and relax a little bit. Okay, to summarize things. Some joints are designed to be mobile. Some joints are designed to be stable, and you can't force a stable joint into being super mobile. Hip mobility is huge. Shoulder mobility is huge, so we avoid injuries from training. If you have any questions, contact us at the fitness center and keep working.